Hello, welcome back to the channel. Thank you for joining me. Today, as you can see, I'm in my shed with a cup of coffee and a pipe. And it's another wet and damp day today, although it might brighten up here. I hope so, because I've got things to do. Anyway, I was chatting to a friend of mine yesterday. We were doing bits of research for the land, and stuff that we might need and projects that we could set up and all this sort of stuff. And he sent me a book. Well, he sent me a link to a book, and I looked at it and I thought, that could be quite interesting. I might buy that. And it was a book about the Amish in America, or the Amish, however it's pronounced. And so I just read a little bit about the synopsis. It was something, I can't remember exactly the title, but it's like something like 100 days survival when you get off the land. Some words to that description, a bit of a guide to what you might want to do. And I thought, well, that sounds great. Just gives us some ideas, you see. But there was a little bit of text in describing the Amish. I think they're based in Pennsylvania, or, well, they may be all over the place, but that's when I went to America, that's where we saw them in their horse-drawn buggies, but we didn't go and actually get onto their area. I can't remember the name of the town now that was nearby. I want to say Lancaster, but obviously not Lancaster in England, but I may have got that wrong. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. The point was, a lot of people are familiar with the Amish or Amish, and they know the sort of thing that they stand for, and they're self-sufficient. They're reliant on nobody other than themselves, and this is what fascinates me. And this little bit of text that I saw said that they didn't want to rely on the electricity and power tools and modern conveniences, because, as it said in the introduction, it makes them reliant on the system. And once you're reliant on the system, well, the system can be switched off, can't it? And we've all known that. And on my channel, we've talked about how we are controlled. We have the all caps name. We have, you buy titles rather than actually the property itself. Everything's falsified, and we know that the system is not really geared to help us, and we've seen that with councils and governments and even the courts and the school system and everything. We know that's all geared to manage us in some way rather than actually assist us to thrive, and that's a real problem. And it's a problem when you realise that's what's going on. And so part of the appeal to me, well, one of the major appeals to me, to get off the out of the system and onto the land and be as self-sufficient as you can, is to be away from all of that control and all of that management and all of those rules and regulations and that you have your own bit of domain, and you're not reliant on their system. And like the Amish or the Amish, you are reliant on yourself, and it's community first, and you rely on those people that you're all interdependent on each other. Now, if you've got a small bit of land, you've got to, if it's just Julia and I and perhaps a few other friends who come along and have access, then you're reliant on them. And so I started to think that as far as we're concerned, it's going to be interesting to go as far as we can. We may not be able to compete with the Amish in exactly the same way. We may not have horses and buggies and a whole community around us. But it would be interesting as far as we can to explore being as reliant on ourselves as possible and building things. So it may be things are a bit Heath Robinson, and it may be things fall down, and it may be that we fail, as I'm sure we probably will, at a number of things. And as long as we can laugh at ourselves and say, well, what a jolly good wheeze that was, but look, we have managed to grow something, and we have managed to eat at the end of it, and we've had a jolly life. That to me is all that matters, really. It's not about making any money, because I'm sure that the whole project will lose money. If it can just stay even, then that's good. The money aspect is totally irrelevant, really, because it's not about money, it's about living. This material world that we're in keeps us downtrodden and worried about where the next pennies are coming from. And as you can see, it's all about getting kids at school to be trained into understanding they've got to work for a living, and usually work for a corporation who takes the money and does whatever they do with it. And that doesn't interest me at all. I want to be able to wake up in the morning and hear the bird song. That the work that one does is not work for a big corporation, that you're a cog in somebody else's machine, a tiny, insignificant cog that can be replaced, that actually you're something that is important, that the experience in and of itself is visceral, that you are part and connected to the ground, and all of those sort of things. I've got a feeling that this is a bit overexposed. Well, I've made a quick adjustment. Seems to be all right. Sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. I'm usually pretty spot on with my lighting and what have you. Anyway, you're not interested in the technical aspect of it all. So one of the things we've been looking at is a scythe. Now, there's some sites where you can get them, and there, of course, there's some second-hand ones, some vintage ones. I don't know how good the vintage ones would be, really and truly, because of age and whether they just fall apart. But there's some ones, but they're quite expensive to get them. To get a proper good scythe, modern scythe, about 200 quid. But at the same time, there's a technique to using a scythe, and it would be great to get one of those in due course and show that. If the land has grass, which we hope it will have, and of course grass needs to be cut to make hay, and indeed we need to be able to cut if we have a crop like wheat or barley or something, and we want to make bread, or we may want to make our own beer, then we're going to need probably a sickle or something like that to be able to harvest it. And I like that idea of you know, because it's going to be very small. It's all hand tool stuff and a bit off grid. So we want to be able to demonstrate that. And we want to be as reliant on non-power tools, but basically, you know, ourselves. Human ingenuity, really, because that's the one thing that we can rely on to a degree. But it may be that we have to get some power tools initially if the place is a right mess. But the more we can do this in this I've got this thing in my bonnet about going back to the 1920s and 30s, and I may have mentioned that before. So I suppose there may be people out there in Britain who've got some stuff, you know, in their sheds like this that they don't need anymore because they've gone on to power tools, or they've given up. That might be useful to people like Julia and I. Now, if you have, do get in touch, and we'd be interested in buying them, depending on what you've got. You know, so there may be somebody with a scythe, or there may be somebody with a sickle or a bill hook, or some of these old things that you've got that are still workable, and that you perhaps would part with for money. So do let us know, because there's, you know, some people may have these bits and bobs and they don't know what to do with them. They don't want to throw them away, and perhaps museums are not interested in them because they've got plenty of them. And we could be a little kind of a working museum, if you like, showing off how these things worked. And of course, if somebody's got something like that they would like to demonstrate how it operated, they could come to our bit of land and show us, and we could share that information. Perhaps there's some clever, more senior people out there who used to do some of this, like the hedge laying and things like that. That would be fantastic for us if we were to, if there's a hedge or we grew a hedge or something. So there's a lot. There's a lot to be thinking about, to be self-reliant, to be dependent on our own, and to be out of the system, and not necessarily relying on all that technological stuff. Now, of course, it may be sensible to have some solar panels and things like that, and not throw all the modern conveniences away, because I'm sure we don't want to make life so difficult that we can't actually do it. We're not spring chickens. And of course, there are plenty of those people in the world that are skeptical that people of our age could even do it. But it may be that at the end of the day, the way the world is going, that we've all got to be a bit out of the system and reliant on ourselves, and know what our limits are and what we can do. I think there's plenty of people who's likely to say things like, oh no, you're too old, or you'll never do it, or farming's too difficult, or it's too hard. And I do think when you see those sort of comments, they're really talking about themselves. It's too hard for them, not too hard for anybody else. That always makes me smile. But I think that if you're determined to be out of the system and you don't want to be reliant, and you're not just content to sit on the sofa and watch the television or eat supermarket food, sooner or later you've got to make that decision that you're going to give the independent world of being free a chance, and take away that business of convenience. And sooner or later you've got to make that choice, and I think that's what Julia and I have done. The world as we see it out there, being governed by what does seem to be a lot of self-centered, egotistical, narcissistic maniacs, is just not for us, and they don't seem to really have us in their sights to help or be kind to. So in the end, a bit like the old days, you've just got to do your own thing and know what you can do. And I think that's going to be the most exciting part, really, is learning new things and knowing where our limits are, how much can we work in the cold, in the rain, in the heat, the extremes, how tired do we get, how we can power through with a good diet, and less of the electronical EMFs and things, and eating good quality food. So that's the journey we want to take, and we're starting that step right now. We've talked about it long enough, we understand it, and as I say, we may make some fantastic mistakes, but that's all part of it. And if we know that, then we can at least laugh at it. Thank you for watching. If you did, I hope you have a lovely Sunday. It's Sunday as I record this, and see you on the next one.